Welcome, everybody. Today we're continuing our conversation around responsible AI, and specifically we're going to be talking a little bit about transparency. Now, transparency is like playing a game where you know what the rules are, everybody knows what the rules are. But imagine somebody asks you to play a game, but they don't tell you the rules, and they also don't tell you why you've lost or won. Now that wouldn't be much fun or fair, would it? Now in AI, when we talk about transparency, we mean that everybody should be able to know how the AI made a decision. Imagine using an AI system that selects who gets a promotion. If you don't understand how the AI decides on who gets that promotion, that wouldn't be fair. Now, often you hear the term explainability in the context of transparency, but transparency is really sort of the broader topic, and it really covers sort of the whole system, the AI system. So how transparent is it? How easy do you know where the data come from? How the algorithms work? How it was trained? So all of the processes and steps involved. Now, explainability is a little bit more focused on explaining how the inner workings of the AI works and how it makes a decision so that you can validate that decision and make sure it's ethical and it's compliant. So you'll also hear the term black box and glass box in artificial intelligence. Now, a black box is really like you would give an AI an input and almost by magic it gives you an output. You don't know how it came to that conclusion, but it comes to some conclusion. Whereas a glass box, you would be able to have more insights into how it uses those inputs to generate some kind of prediction or outcome. Now, black boxes aren't bad, and you need to make sure that the AI system that you use is sufficient in terms of the use case. So for example, a AI system that is very accurate at flagging fraudulent transactions, even though it might be a black box, could be very useful. It allows you to narrow down on those cases that you might want to investigate. Also, if AI decides what Netflix movie you should watch next, you're not really that interested or concerned about how the AI made that decision. So there's a lot of use cases for this black box type artificial intelligence. However, there are some instances and some use cases where you want the decision-making process of the artificial intelligence to be more transparent. For example, in calculating life insurance premiums or medical diagnosis, you would generally want to know how the system came up with the price or the diagnosis. That doesn't mean that black box systems can't be used in a medical scenario, for example. Many AI systems these days are able to actually predict certain types of diseases more accurate than specialists. Now, if you pair up the black box with the specialist, you're bringing explainability back into the system. So it depends on the use case. Not everything needs to be fully transparent all of the time. And just make sure that it's sufficiently transparent and explainable for the use case that you've got. Now there's this inverse relationship between accuracy and explainability. Generally, the more explainable an AI system, model, or algorithm is, the less accurate it is. So when you get to like deep learning, deep neural network type algorithms, it can be very accurate, but also very difficult to explain. So you need to find the right balance between the explainability that you require and the accuracy that you require. Now, what could be some of the sources of transparency issues? Firstly, the complexity of the algorithms. Clearly, if an algorithm is really, really complex, it's going to make it really difficult for you to understand and explain. If you take the ChatGPT, for example, it's a very complex algorithm using billions of parameters. The chances of you being able to explain and look into how it came up with an answer is a very complex problem. So algorithm complexity can introduce transparency issues, but again, it depends on your use case. If you don't really have insight into the data that it uses, where it was sourced from, and understanding how the data works, it could introduce transparency issues. And in many instances, you might be using proprietary models. Due to competitive reasons, people might not share exactly how a model works. And if you don't have that insight, there could be transparency issues. So sort of just be aware of that and make sure that you address this in terms of the use case. Other sources of transparency issues could include insufficient documentation. If you're not really sure how the system works and somebody needs to start working with it, but it wasn't sufficiently documented, of course you've got some transparency issues there. Lack of expertise, if you don't have people that actually know and understand how the system works, and then trying to interpret outcomes, that could introduce some transparency issues. AI systems also tend to learn as they go. And as they learn, you might not have full insights into what they've learned and how they're going to apply that new acquired knowledge, which could be a source of transparency issues. And in many instances, there might be legal or regulatory requirements for certain sets of data not to be made available, and that sort of just make sure that you are aware of that, and that could introduce some transparency challenges, that you can't really have deep insights into the end-to-end system. Now, there are some ways to mitigate some of these transparency issues. One way is to simplify the model. You can't always simplify all of the models, but if you are developing something in-house and you've got opportunities to simplify the model, maybe use less parameters, if it's not really going to make an impact on the outcome or your accuracy. So model simplification is one way. Enhancing your understanding of the data. Make sure you understand where the data comes from, the process of how it was collected. Make sure you understand the pre-processing steps. So enhancing your understanding of the life cycle of data that the system uses can help you to address some transparency issues. And then, of course, there are some tools and frameworks available like Lime and SHAP, which allows you to some extent, explain the outcome and how a model made a decision. It only works on certain types of algorithms, and it doesn't really give you a sense of the overall explainability of the model, but can help you with specific cases and outcomes. Regulatory compliance, of course, make sure that you comply to the relevant regulatory compliance. That would make sure you address some transparency issues. Standards and designs, if you've got good standards and design principles in your AI systems, it's going to help with transparency issues. And then make sure you've got sufficient oversight and reporting as to make sure that that's transparent, how your system is working and performing. Now, in many cases, you'd be working with third-party AI solution providers, and some questions and question themes you might want to think of asking them is, how explainable is their AI system? How are they addressing transparency? What are the sources of their data? How are they training the data? What accountability measures do they have in place? Are they complying to industry regulations and specifically also local regulations? And then auditing. How are they going to be auditing the system? What reports do they have available? So these are some questions you could consider and need to think of when using third-party AI solution providers around the topic of transparency and explainability. Now I'm going to end off with a little bit of a story. So imagine you're in this unique restaurant, and the way this works is the chef asks you a couple of questions, and then the chef will make and bring you the dish. You don't see the menu. Now that might be exciting and fun, but at the back of your mind you still might want to know what actually went into this That's very similar to sometimes using AI systems. There's a couple of questions the system might ask you, and it comes up with an answer which feels right, but sometimes it might make you feel a bit uneasy. So I guess just sort of reflect on how you would feel using certain AI systems for certain decisions or recommendations in your life, and when would you be comfortable having it being non-transparent versus completely explainable. I look forward to seeing you in the next session, where we will be talking about accountability. And so when an AI messes up, who's accountable? I look forward to seeing you. Cheers for now.